Hey guys, as you know, today is probably our last lecture, our last class that will take place before we actually leave for our Thanksgiving break. So I just want to take this time to review all the material that we have learned so far about single-celled organism. If you guys remember, single-celled organisms are those that literally have just one cell and they survive on that one cell. Ridiculous, right? Like we have so many cells. We have millions and billions of cells within our body and different types of cells within our body. But surprisingly, in our environment, right now even, around me are millions and millions of organisms, of living organisms that exist, and they're so small that we cannot even see them. And to study them, we would probably have to use means like a microscope. And hopefully you guys can see some of these organisms when you guys come back to school and we look at them in our class using a microscope. But first, we had something called an amoeba. If you guys remember, amoeba was a blob-like structure that literally just floats around. It has a special instrument that it uses called a pseudofoot. It's something that it looks like the shape of the food, and it just just squirts along, like just moves along, and it literally just oozes. There's not really a way in which it moves. It does not really have an actual feet or hair particles that will allow it to move. It just oozes along and it just goes away. We also learned about something called euglena. Second type of single-celled organism. It's a funny little one with one single hair coming out from its head, which it uses to move from place to place. So the hair on the head is known as a flagellum, which pulls the organism forward or pushes it backward. And then we also learned about something called a paramecium. Now, this was the third type of the unicellular organism, and it is the one that contains hair all over its body. And what happens is that it uses this hair to move. Again, the hair particles that are attached to its body are known as cilia, spelled C-I-L-I-A. And it just kind of like, suppose these are the hair particles, it just kind of like moves along like that and pushes the organism forward or backward. And finally, we had one more organism, the fourth living organism, called volvox. Now, volvox is a type of algae. It's green in color, and the color green tells us that it probably contains chloroplasts. Now, chloroplasts are the cell that use sunlight to produce its own food. And this process where they produce their own food is called photosynthesis, right? Through the process of photosynthesis, they create their own food in the form of sugar or glucose, and they also release oxygen into the atmosphere, which we then breathe in, right? Now, those were the four organisms that we learned about. But other than that, we also learned about two specific functions. The first one was diffusion, and the second one was osmosis. Do you remember what these are? Let's review them together. The first one that we are looking at is diffusion. Diffusion is a process where particles are moving within the cell from a concentrated area to an area that has more space. Let's imagine an example. For example, if you were in a subway and you went to a train compartment that was filled with people, you're uncomfortable, right? And you'll probably try to move to another compartment that's not filled with people, that has very few people. So the movement from which you're moving from a concentrated place to a less concentrated place, that's called diffusion. Similarly, in terms of cells, when particles move from an area that's crowded to an area that's not so crowded, that's diffusion. And the second process that we learned about was osmosis. Now, osmosis is the process through which water particles can actually move through the cell wall or the cell membrane. Now, if you put a potato, for example, in water, it would soak in the water, right? It would soak in the moisture. Now, that is osmosis. The cell membrane is allowing water to enter it, right? To enter the potato. That's osmosis. Now, if you compare water to a potato is definitely more concentrated, right? It has so many different tissues, so many different plant cells, right? Millions and millions of plant cells compose a potato, right? Compared to just water. Water is definitely not as concentrated or crowded as a potato. So the movement where water particles are moving from, its environment to a more concentrated, more crowded area like a potato is called osmosis. So let's just review this real quick. Diffusion is when particles move from more concentrated to less concentrated area. But osmosis is when particles are moving from less concentrated to more concentrated area. And I hope this helps you review all the content that we have learned, well, at least majority of it. Please be sure to look at other videos and other notes and your note list that was provided to you before you actually take a break. Because when we come back, we still want to remember most of these content or most of these information. And I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful break. And I will see you guys when you come back. Have a great day. Bye.